That moment with the gardener changed everything, and I couldn't hold back my impulses. This is what happened. Stay until the end to hear this story. So make yourself comfortable, and we invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any video. That morning started like any other, although the heavy rain falling on the roof gave the day a different, almost melancholic air. From my bedroom window, I watched the drops slide down the glass, creating irregular patterns that captured my attention more than they should have. It wasn't common for me to get up so early on days like this, but something in the air kept me restless, as if something was about to happen. From the dining room, I heard the sound of the back door slamming open and then shut forcefully. It was Carlos, the gardener. Despite the weather, he didn't stop working. He said the plants needed care, even in the rain. Although he had been at the house for years, I always found it difficult to talk to him beyond the usual greetings. There was something about his presence that intimidated me. Maybe it was the way he moved, always with an almost defiant calm, or the intensity with which he looked at you as if he could see beyond the words. Are you enjoying the video so far? If so, leave us a like and subscribe. Let's continue. I decided to go downstairs. I found Carlos in the kitchen, soaked from head to toe, taking off his wet coat. His dark hair was stuck to his forehead, and small drops of water ran down his face. When he looked up and saw me, he smiled shyly. "Sorry for the mess," he said as he hung his coat over a chair. "Don't worry," I replied, although my voice came out softer than I expected. "Wouldn't it be better for you to take the day off?" "With this rain?" Carlos shook his head. "The plants don't wait. Besides, it's not that bad." There was something in his voice, in the way he spoke, that always made me feel small, as if what I said wasn't enough to fill the space between us. But at the same time, his smile and words left me wanting to stay close. Without thinking too much, I went to the cupboard and took out a towel. "Here, take this," I said as I handed it to him. Carlos took it, his fingers brushing against mine briefly. It was an insignificant gesture, but the contact left me motionless for a moment. As he dried his hair, I realized I was watching him more than necessary. I quickly looked away, pretending to search for something in the pantry. "Thank you," Carlos said after a few minutes. His voice seemed closer, and when I turned around, he was in front of me, his expression softer than usual. "You're always kind to me." "It's nothing," I replied, although I felt my face warming up. The rest of the morning went by normally, or at least I tried to convince myself of that. However, something had changed in me. Every time I passed by the garden and saw him working in the rain, his shirt clinging to his body and his face focused, I felt a mix of emotions that I didn't know how to handle. Hey, since you're watching, subscribe. It would help me a lot. Let's continue. By mid-afternoon, the rain began to lessen, and I decided to bring him a hot coffee. Carlos was bent over, adjusting something in one of the bushes when I approached. Hearing my footsteps, he looked up and smiled. "I brought you this," I said, extending the cup. "Thanks," he replied as he stood up, accepting it carefully. He took a sip and his eyes lit up. "It's perfect." We stood there under the porch, watching as the rain diminished to a light drip. We talked about simple things, the weather, work, music. Gradually, the conversation became more personal. He told me about his family, about how he started working as a gardener after losing his father. I shared my dreams, the things I wanted to do but never dared to try. "You're braver than you think," he said suddenly, his voice full of a certainty that puzzled me. "Why do you say that?" I asked. "Because you speak from the heart, even if you don't realize it. That's not something easy to do." The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. There was something in his words that made me feel seen, as if he understood something about me that I was ignoring. That night, as I lay down, I couldn't stop thinking about Carlos, about his smile, about the way his eyes seemed to seek something beyond words. For the first time, I allowed myself to accept what I felt, even though I didn't know how to put it into words. The following days were different. Every time Carlos came to work, I looked for excuses to talk to him, to spend time by his side. And although he didn't say much, his gestures, his glances spoke more than any words could express. One afternoon, while helping him carry some tools, I tripped and fell to the ground. Carlos quickly approached, offering me a hand. When our hands met, he didn't let go immediately. Instead, he helped me up and stayed there, looking at me with an intensity that took my breath away. "Are you okay?" he asked, although his tone suggested the question went beyond my fall. "Yes," I replied, although my voice trembled slightly. Carlos took a step back, but he didn't break eye contact. It was at that moment that I knew he felt it too. It was undeniable, something we couldn't keep ignoring. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more content like this. Let's continue. That night, while I was sitting on the sofa, I heard a light knock on the back door. It was Carlos. He looked nervous but determined. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, letting him in. We sat in the living room, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Finally, Carlos spoke. "I don't know how to say this, but I think I have feelings for you." His words took me by surprise, even though a part of me already knew. I looked at him, trying to process what I had just heard. "I feel it too," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Carlos smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's not easy for me. I never thought I would feel this for someone, much less for someone like you. But I can't keep pretending that nothing is happening." We looked at each other in silence, letting our words float in the air. Finally, Carlos leaned in and kissed me. It was a soft, almost shy kiss, but full of emotion. In that moment, everything else disappeared. The kiss, although brief, left a mark I couldn't ignore. As Carlos pulled away, a mix of fear and desire reflected in his face. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" he murmured, almost to himself. I nodded, still feeling the warmth of his lips. That night, as I returned to my room, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Everything felt new, exciting, and terrifying all at once. What did this mean for us? How would we move forward? My mind was filled with questions, but one thing was clear. I could no longer deny what I felt. The next day, our encounters were more intimate, filled with glances and touches that had seemed impossible before. Every conversation, every shared moment deepened our connection. Although fear still lingered, there was something even stronger beginning to grow, the certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. However, as our relationship progressed, so did my fear. I was afraid of what others would think, what they would say if they saw us together. And although Carlos tried to be patient, I knew my insecurity was hurting him. One afternoon, after an argument, Carlos looked at me sadly. "I can't keep doing this if you're not willing to accept what we are," he said. His words hit me like a punch. I knew he was right, but fear was still stronger than I was. That night, while I was alone in my room, I realized something. I loved Carlos, but I couldn't love him halfway. If I wanted to be with him, I had to be brave. The next day, I went to find him. I found him in the garden, working as always. When he saw me, his expression changed. Before I could say anything, I approached him and kissed him, regardless of who might see us. "I'm sorry," I said when we separated. "You were right. I can't keep hiding. I love you and I want to be with you, no matter what happens." Carlos smiled, and in that moment I knew it was all worth it. Despite the challenges, despite the fear, I chose love, because with him, everything was possible. If you liked the video and this content brought you value, leave us a like and share it with your friends so you don't miss it.